Taoiseach, in last year's budget you made big play out of the fact that you didn't cut. Thanks very much, I appreciate that.
Sorry, would you please proceed? Thank you.
They're eating into our time, Chair.
Now, the reality is, of course, that you mightn't have cut the headline rate, but you made very sharp and very deep cuts in a whole raft of schemes that are very important to people. I'll mention some of those schemes: the fuel allowance, the family income supplement, the community employment schemes, the two schemes, job seekers benefit, child benefit, farm assist, and particularly schemes that affect women. For some reason, the Minister always seems to want to target women for her cuts. In the budget, the Minister announced significant cutbacks of 2/3 in the materials and in the training grants for the 22,000 people on community employment schemes, targeting a saving of 36 million. Because of the backlash against this, she announced a review. We understand that this review has been completed for some considerable time, and RTE have stated that letters have been sent out to some CE providers telling them that there will be a cut of 30 to 40% in the material and training grants. Could you tell us when will the review be published and why is it not published yet? Why is it being hidden from this House? And can you outline what cuts are being applied to the community employment schemes and the two schemes around the country, and how many places will be lost and how many people will be laid off these schemes because of the government action?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, can I welcome Deputy O'Keefe back to active service? Great to see her. I missed you, and I look forward, since this is the last day of this Dáil session, I look forward to seeing you here regularly when we return in September. In relation to community employment schemes, this government supports community employment. It plays an important role in the provision of crucial services to both rural and urban communities across the country. Currently, there are 1,143 CE schemes in operation nationally, with 23,300 places, of which there are approximately 22,000 participants and approximately 1,400 full-time supervisor posts. The overall estimated budget for CE in 2012 will be approximately 340 million. Of course, as part of the requirement that we have to fix the hole left in the public finances by Fianna Fáil, it is necessary to examine all aspects of expenditure across every government department. And it was against this background that the financial review of CE schemes got underway a couple of months ago. The main objective was to identify areas where savings could be achieved through efficiencies, so that the best use could be made of the available funds. As a result of the review, significant savings have already been made to the overheads of CE projects in terms of annual insurance costs and audit fees. The savings will increase next year, as some projects had already incurred these costs prior to the new arrangements being put in place. Under the revised arrangements, schemes will no longer be given universal amounts of financial support, but will instead be provided with a specific level of support aimed at meeting the particular costs necessarily incurred by the individual CE scheme, having regard to the overall level of funding available to CE nationally. The materials and CE and training CE budget has now been increased by €9.5 million from the original budget of approximately €11 million, following savings identified elsewhere in the Department of Social Protection budget. The new CE materials and training budget is thus €20.5 million. Each community employment scheme has been notified of its revised material and training allocation based on the amounts recommended by the Department's divisional staff following consultations with schemes. The majority of schemes have indicated satisfaction with their revised allocation in these difficult economic times. In addition to the training allocation for schemes, CE participants may also access a number of Springboard, VEC and FOSS courses free of charge. As a result of the CE review process, the Minister for Social Protection has also introduced an appeals mechanism for schemes when they feel that they are unable to survive on the new training and material allocations. It is also worth noting that a separate labour activation schemes policy review is underway, and this review, which is nearing completion, will also help to inform the Department's strategic approach in relation to these schemes, including CE programmes into the future.
Deputy O'Keefe, 1 minute.
Taoiseach, when the schemes were brought in under the Department of Social Protection, the idea was to look at the total budget paid to people who are out of work and to transfer money from the 5 billion we pay people to do nothing, which is very bad for their health and for their well-being, and to transfer it over into opportunities to make a useful contribution to society, which is good for their own well-being and good for society. In other words, we saw people not as a burden, but as a resource. This government seems to see otherwise.
Could I have a question, please?
Could you confirm that the RSI, in their review of your budget, made it absolutely clear that the 2012 budget imposed greater percentage losses on those with low incomes? The second question I have is, when will the review be published? And the third question I have is, could you give me details of the average cut per scheme across the country, the average cut per scheme across this country, so that we know exactly what the Minister has done in relation to cutting CE schemes?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, Deputy O'Keefe, you have a hard neck to lecture this government either about CE schemes or about the budget or about anything in relation to the economy. You left government last February 12 months, leaving behind you the biggest financial and economic mess that this country has ever faced. And in the 16 months,
Thank you.
in the 16
Thank you.
in the 16 months since then, this government has made strides to restore this country's economic fortunes. We have successfully separated bank debt from sovereign debt, which you left us. We reduced the interest rate on the borrowings that we had. We are working our way to recovery. And in relation to those who are on the lowest incomes, we reversed the cut in the minimum wage that you made. We took 300,000 people out of the universal social charge, which you had met. We are doing reforms. We are doing reforms in the area of social protection. And as far as social employment schemes is concerned, the man sitting beside me, Minister Quinn, was the man who introduced social employment schemes. This government is committed to maintaining social employment schemes. We are supporting them. The amount of money that is available for labour activation and for social protection and for schemes such as this has actually increased. We have over 22,000 people in social employment schemes, and the Minister for Social Protection, yes, she has made changes in the way the trainings and material money is being provided to social employment schemes, and as I've said, the vast majority of social employment schemes have indicated their satisfaction with that.
Deputy O'Connell. Sorry, Deputy O'Connell, please. This is the last warning now. Somebody's going to take a walk, I'm telling you. Deputy O'Connell. Deputy O'Quailon, I said, thank you.
Can you hear me? Taoiseach, can you use the opportunity of this final leader's question of this Dáil session this morning to firmly rule out any attempt, as was proposed yesterday by the IMF, to further curtail entitlement to medical cards? And would you also rule out any government consideration of an attack on child benefit? Taoiseach, when the Cabinet met last Tuesday to sign off on the Health Service Executive Governance Bill, was there any indication given by the Minister for Health in the course of that meeting of the decision by Cathal McGee, the HSE CEO, to tender his resignation? Can I ask you, Taoiseach, when and how did you yourself learn of Mr McGee's decision? And how do you explain the situation where your party colleague and Minister of State at the Department of Health, Roisin Shortall, indicated yesterday that she had only learnt of Mr McGee's decision through the media and correctly expressed her regret at his decision? Do you agree with her comments that indeed his departure was, and I quote, a significant blow to the health service? Taoiseach, how would you describe the relationship between the Senior Minister, James Riley, and your party colleague, Deputy Roisin Shortall, in their respective roles in the Department of Health? Are they, just very straightforwardly, are they even on speaking terms? Would you clarify for us? And may I just, in conclusion, ask you, Taoiseach, do you accept that the budget allocation for health in 2012 was such that the targeted so-called savings were absolutely unrealisable, with a 750 million cut this year built on a 1 billion cut in the previous year? Do you accept, Taoiseach, that these were not realisable targets and that we have burdened health service delivery managements with a non-attainable target in this year?
Well, first of all, Deputy O'Quillan asks about the recommendations or the statement that was made by the IMF in relation to child benefit and other matters. I think, first of all, it's important that I should make it clear that the IMF statement yesterday is quite different to the quarterly review that is carried out by the IMF and by the Troika of the Irish programme. What was done yesterday was done under what is called Article 4, which is a very different process to the quarterly Troika programme review mission, and it has a very different focus and rationale. The programme review focuses on, this is the actual Troika programme review, which is the normal quarterly review that is done by the IMF, the EU and the ECB. That focuses on short-term issues and our adherence to the agreed commitments which are made in the programme. The Article 4 process, which was what was announced yesterday by the IMF, is strategic in its focus and considers medium to long-term policy themes. Now, I think it's important that we should welcome the comments made by the IMF about our steadfast efforts in areas such as the banking crisis, the implementation of fiscal consolidation, despite the adverse external environment that has tested confidence and delayed recovery. What the IMF were talking about yesterday, as I said, are medium to long-term recommendations that they're making to the government. They're not specific recommendations that are made in the context of next year's budget, or they're not specific recommendations that are made in the context of the programme. The issue, obviously, about next year's budget is something that the government has yet to come to, and I think at this point in the year, I don't think that it is appropriate to be speculating about what may or may not be in the budget. But I think it's important to make it clear that what the IMF, the IMF statement yesterday was done under a different process to the process that it refers to the actual programme. With regard to what's discussed at cabinet meetings, I have no intention and it's a long-standing practice that we don't discuss what is discussed at cabinet meetings.
Deputy O'Quailon, 1 minute, thank you.
Count Corley, what the Taoiseach hasn't done is to answer the questions directly. I've asked you to avail of the opportunity to firmly and clearly state that there would be no countenance given to the IMF's recommendation yesterday of a further curtailment of access to medical cards. You haven't ruled that out. You've talked in vague terms about, some point down the road. I mean, you haven't ruled this out, and nor have you ruled out any attack on child benefit. Taoiseach, this was the opportunity to firmly put these ideas to bed. End of story. They're not and should not be matters for consideration, whether it be in the upcoming budget or in any future budget. And I ask you, Taoiseach, when are you and the Labour Party going to draw the line in relation to these matters?
Thank you.
Now, in relation to the issues I've asked regarding the matter of the departure of Cathal McGee, you're not going to share with us the so-called confidentiality of cabinet discussions. But I'm asking you again, when and how did you become aware of Mr McGee's decision? And what do you believe is the current relationship between your Minister of State at the Department of Health and the Senior Minister with responsibility? Is it not clear that you have got to assert your party's position, or is it going to be Riley's way rather than Labour's way?
Taoiseach, please. Thank you. Sorry, could we hear the Taoiseach? Thank you. Sorry, could I have the Taoiseach, please? Thank you.
Well, first of all, in relation to the statement yesterday from the IMF, as I have explained to Deputy O'Quailon, that statement from the IMF was not in the context of the programme that we are operating, not in the context of next year's budget. It was, as I said, the Article 4 process, which is medium to long-term recommendations. So, first of all, in terms of next year's budget, it's not a case of ruling out or whatever. These are recommendations which are made in the long term. They're done. They do this for every country. It's a periodic thing that is done under the Article 4 process, and it is not something that the government has to follow. It's not part of the programme. The issues in relation to the issues in relation to the budget, we will come to that when we come to budget time and government makes decisions in relation to the budget.
Thank you. Deputy Ross, thank you. Deputy Ross, thank you. Deputy Ross, please.
Thank you, Cancolo. Cancolo, I think the whole House is anticipating the announcement and will welcome the announcement of an inquiry into the bank guarantee of September 2008, and the sooner it comes, the better. And I say that because I think we are in danger of already repeating the mistakes of 2008 unless we are particularly vigilant. The Taoiseach will be aware that there are banking scandals breaking globally. Giants like Barclays, Lloyds TSB, HSBC and others are the subject of investigations in the US and in the UK. And we have had our own problems, as you know, with Ulster. But one of the more sinister developments, I think, in recent days has been when the Ulster Bank scandal started to break here, the Bank of Ireland made an announcement, which begs into question whether the government is really hands-on with the banks at all. They announced a new governor in a press release one day after the Ulster Bank scandal started to break. Nobody really noticed what was happening when they did that. But it's important to the government for two reasons. One is because the Bank of Ireland is part of its pillar bank strategy, and the second is because it holds 15% of Bank of Ireland and has 2 directors on the board. The governor announced was recruited from Lloyds TSB. It was not in the press release. But Lloyds TSB is the subject of a serious investigation and was found to have missold over $3 billion worth of protection insurance, personal protection insurance, less than 2 years ago.
Question, please. Thank you.
The question is this. Was the Taoiseach aware that the appointee as Governor of the Bank of Ireland was the director in charge of insurance at that time and had his bonus docked, which is pretty well unique for a banker, almost impossible for it to happen, had his bonus docked by $250,000? And was he kept informed of that by the public interest directors?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, in relation to the holding of a banking inquiry, the government is determined to get to the bottom of what happened on the night of the bank guarantee. The objective is to ensure that we have the most effective mechanism to get to the truth of that. Our focus is to have the most robust form of inquiry within the confines of the Constitution, and sheds as much light as we can on who was involved politically and administratively in the decision-making process that lumbered this state with a debt-ridden situation that we're working very hard now to undo. Now, since the outcome of last October's referendum, very substantial and detailed analysis has been carried out on the scope for Oireachtas inquiries operating within the parameters set out in the Abbey Lara judgment. And the main conclusions of this legal assessment are summarised in the letter from the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform to the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, which issued following the government consideration of options for an Oireachtas inquiry on banking matters at the end of last month. With regard to the situation in Ulster Bank, the technical problems at Ulster Bank are having a huge effect on the bank's personal and business customers throughout the country. And it is totally unacceptable. It is totally unacceptable that it has taken Ulster Bank so long to deal with those problems. In relation to Bank of Ireland is substantially a private company, and no, I was not informed of the Governor's background.
Thank you. Deputy Ross.
Thank you, Taoiseach. The Bank of Ireland was largely privately owned when the last disaster happened in 2008 as well. And the reason why we have the 15% holding, which was larger, and why we have two public interest directors is because it is such a vital part of the Irish economy. And the appointment of its governor is an absolutely crucial position in which the government has obviously got a key interest. And what I want to know is whether, and my guess is the government didn't know anything about his history or anything about his pedigree or anything about the mis-selling scandal in Lloyds or anything about the fact that he was director at the time or anything about the fact that he was forced to give up his bonus. And I don't want to be too specific, but I think very generally,
thank you.
Could the Taoiseach tell me this? Are the public interest directors doing anything on these banks? If they didn't inform the government about the pedigree and the past and the history and the detailed history of someone who's going to be Governor of the Bank of Ireland, they're not doing their job. And do they report to a minister and say, this is the situation? And did they report to a minister and say, look, this is the guy who's going to be appointed and this is his history? And did the minister know this and accept this?
Thank you.
Well, as I've said, I wasn't aware of the individual's background. The Bank of Ireland is 85% privately owned bank. Now, I think that Deputy Ross would be the very first to criticise the government if it was seen to be in some way micromanaging the affairs of the bank. It seems to me that the questions that Deputy Ross is asking about the communication between the public interest directors and the Minister for Finance are matters that he should appropriately address to the Minister for Finance by way of a direct parliamentary question.
Thank you.